According to Vygotsky, any human act that gives rise to something new is referred to as a creative act. This can be either physical or it can be mental or emotional construct. The first thing that I'll go through are the two basic types of activity. There is reproductive, which is linked to memory, reproducing a past behavior. Nothing new is created. It is a repetition of something that already exists. Therefore, stimulations that are strong enough or repeated numerous times are retained in our memory. This is like when tires make a trace in the mud and eventually, over time, a track is formed. The second type of activity is called combinational or creative activity. This is when we rework elements of past experiences and use them to generate new propositions. An example of this type of activity would be when I imagine what our world will look like 100 years from now. I don't actually know what this will look like, but based on my own past experiences, I have my own idea. This is called human creative activity. This creative activity I am referring to is called imagination or fantasy in psychology, but this isn't the type of fantasy you usually think of, being something that is not true or real. Instead, imagination is the basis of all creative activity. It's an essential component of all aspects of cultural life. Every invention that was created by man was the product of imagination. Most people think that only geniuses that created inventions like electricity have large imaginations, but this isn't true. You and I are both creative. Creativity is present whenever we imagine, combine elements, alter something, or create something new, no matter how small it is. Now that you see creativity from this point of view, you can understand that creative processes are already fully manifest in earliest childhood. We see this when children engage in dramatic play. Vygotsky says a child's play is not a reproduction of what he has experienced, but a creative reworking of an impression he has acquired. Number 1. Everything the imagination creates is always based on elements taken from reality, a person's previous experience. To me, this means that our brains can take multiple things we have experienced and put them together to create something new. Our imaginations do not create things out of thin air. Vygotsky tells us that the richer our experiences are, the more material we have to create fantasy or imagination. As a future teacher, I know this means that I need to provide my students with an abundance of rich experiences to help broaden their creativity. The second linkage is more complex and relates to the final product of imagination. It is not a reproduction of a past experience, but a new combination from an experience which creates something completely new. Vygotsky gives us the example of a desert. If I did not have the concepts of a lack of water, dryness, sand, and animals that live in a desert, I would not generate the concept of a desert itself. Even though I've never actually seen a desert in person, I can still imagine it and create something new. Third type of association between imagination and reality has to do with emotions. All of our emotions and feelings have images that resonate with them, both external and internal. This is so fascinating to think about, because our imaginations are always affecting our feelings. Have you ever read a book and gotten emotionally attached and invested in a character? Our imaginations correspond so much with our emotions that we feel as if those characters were real. The last type of association shows us that a construct of fantasy could represent something new that we have never experienced in humanity before. However, when this form of imagination does become a real physical object, it does exist in reality. An example of this is when an inventor imagines so many different ideas when creating something, and then one day it finally becomes a real-life physical object. Then it's no longer a fantasy, but it exists in reality. Overall, the big picture that I learned, and I hope that you can now see, is that our imaginations are purposeful, and our experiences help us form our creativity.